Welcome back to A Hill with a View. Sorry about my hiatus last week. That was a week off with Yeshiva week with the kids, so sorry I had to take the week off. So all of you who were waiting all week for my episode, I did try and post on YouTube that I wasn't going to be around. I don't know if that actually worked. Hopefully some people got the message. So, but it was quite a week. It was kind of insane this past weekend. Minneapolis is it still here? I don't even know if Minneapolis is still around. If it is still around and you're hearing me from Minneapolis or anywhere in the country, please remember to like, subscribe, share the podcast, share the YouTube videos, share the Spotify links, share the Apple podcast links, share the x.com/hillwithaview link, facebook.com/hillwithaview. Please just share everything. That would be great. We want to keep the channel growing. So that would be amazing. So make sure to share. Now, the news of the weekend is all about what happened in Minneapolis. The Alex Pretti was shot. He got into a fight with the cops, with Customs and Border Patrol, who the only reason why CBP was there is because ICE was overwhelmed. ICE was overwhelmed because the Democrats in Minneapolis and Minnesota decided to help leftist agitators fight ICE on the streets. They helped coordinate the signal chats. They encouraged them in the media. And so when people go and, attack ICE at their hotels, attack ICE on the streets, then you need to call in backup. So they called in CBP backup. Things got more escalated. A second person was killed. This was entirely avoidable, entirely predictable, and we knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. If anyone who's been watching this stuff say, someone's going to get killed if we keep going on this. Now, there's been plenty of commentary about all this so far. I don't need to tread on ground that's already been walked on plenty of times. What I would like to talk about, though, is how the left is claiming that the right is giving up the Second Amendment because Alex Pretti happened to be carrying a firearm to a protest. A bunch of people in the Trump administration said he shouldn't have been doing that. He shouldn't carry a firearm to a protest, especially a protest against law enforcement. Then people on the left are defending the Second Amendment, saying, what are you talking about? Minneapolis has open carry laws. It's okay. It's acceptable. How dare you possibly say this? So the left, which hates the Second Amendment, is now defending the Second Amendment so their people on their side can shoot law enforcement. That's really what they want to happen. They want them to have the ability to shoot law enforcement. Now, I have defended the Second Amendment for many years, and I think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding by the left on when the Second Amendment is to be used and exercised, just like speech, which also the left hates. The left hates speech, just like with a lot of our rights, and when you shouldn't exercise that right. In fact, it would be really dumb to exercise that right, or you should accept the consequences of exercising that right. So, since the left has filled social media with the same, talking points, the right doesn't care about the Second Amendment anymore, comparing it to other people who have used the Second Amendment to their defense, then they just inundated. I don't want to give you all of the different examples that I've seen. So I'll just go with the dumbest one, which is always personified by Jon Stewart, who always makes the dumbest version of every argument because his argument is always showing clips out of context and then making dumb faces to a camera. He's been doing this for 25 years, more. He's been doing this for a very long time, and makes the same argument every single time. So this is what he posted. The Second Amendment fetishists who brought you Kyle Rittenhouse and January 6th think Alex Pretti's legal gun was the problem. Are you effing kidding? Okay. So it's a almost 7-minute clip, but I'm going to just play a little bit of it.
This is blowing my fucking mind.
Oh yeah, and he
The
curses.
people that brought you this guy and these guys and these guys as fucking heroes who are brandishing their weapons are telling you the big mistake was letting us.
Pause it there. There were no weapons in January 6th. Nobody went into the Capitol with a gun. I mean, maybe in like the crowd, the large crowd, like in the rally, there probably were, even though that doesn't really make sense because Secret Service wouldn't allow guns that close to where President Trump was speaking. But nobody went into the Capitol with a gun because they would have talked about that constantly. But, all right.
A citizen legally carry a gun. I mean, listen, I wasn't shocked when you guys gave up the First Amendment, and I wasn't shocked when you gave up the Fourth Amendment and the 10th Amendment and the 14th Amendment.
Okay, they hate all of these amendments. It drives me crazy that they're pretending that they haven't also attacked each one of these amendments. So the First Amendment, who wants to write the hate speech laws? Who wants to regulate social media? Who wanted to regulate Twitter before Elon bought it? Who wanted to do all that? It was all the Democrats. Who wanted to regulate Facebook? Mark Zuckerberg openly said that Democrats threatened him to regulate Facebook. What other amendments did he say? He said Fourth Amendment, due process. Who puts people on no-fly lists without due process? The Tulsi Gabbard was put on a no-fly list without due process. The 14th Amendment, who wants to basically write laws based on the color of your skin? They're constantly doing things. There's not one access. There's not access to every law. No, there's not equal laws to everybody. It depends on the color of your skin. They're the ones who say no one is above the law. Meanwhile, they're claiming that if you come from South America or Mexico and you break into our country, you could stay here forever. They are literally protesting the deporting of illegal alien criminals right now. And they claim no one's above the law. The 10th Amendment, are you kidding me? They're the ones who want to nationalize abortion. They're the ones who want to nationalize voting. Like, are you kidding me with all this? This drives me nuts, okay? But and so he cherry picks, this is where the right attacks these amendments, all these rights. He's the one who they do it all the time for years. The gaslighting is unbelievable. I need to take a few more minutes on Jon Stewart here because Jon Stewart likes to do this data dump thing where he just throws a bunch of information at you as if it's like correct or makes sense or you should just understand what he's talking about, where he's just lying to you. He's just straight up lying. So what Jon Stewart said over here is in this clip, which I'm not going to play because I'm just showing you the headlines, which are over here. He says that Trump is violating the First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, 10th Amendment, and 14th Amendment, and he's just shocked that they're also doing this to the Second Amendment. And I looked up each one of these headlines that he shows in his background over here. And what he's showing you is, this is his example of the First Amendment. FCC targets TV shows. I'm pulling it up. Okay, here's the USA Today article. FCC targets TV shows amid Trump's battle with Kimmel, others. Okay, so this is the USA Today article. This is from 5 days ago, so this is not when Kimmel was taken off the air temporarily and all that stuff. This is from a few days ago. And this is a recent FCC guidance that he's talking about. What is he talking about in this particular article, which is what The Daily Show, what Jon Stewart claimed is an example of Trump attacking the First Amendment? It's guidance from a law in 1934, which and this is basically from the article. I'm just reading the article. It's guidance from the Communication Act of 1934, which was amended in 1959, which basically says that if shows give time to one candidate, they have to give equal time to another candidate, because the FCC is telling broadcast television that they are using public airwaves And as part of using public airwaves, they cannot put their fingers on the scale of one particular candidate over another particular candidate. So what they're saying is to all these broadcast shows, hey, which are on regular channels, okay, they're telling all of them, you cannot have Kamala Harris on for 10 hours and not have Trump on once. Or for 2 minutes and not have Trump on once. You have to have equal time because we are giving you these airwaves. We are letting you use these airwaves. Okay, that's what the FCC doing. That's not a violation of the First Amendment. They're not telling them that they can't say one thing or another thing. They're not restricting their speech at all. What they're saying is you cannot put your finger on the scale because we give you those airwaves. So that's the first example that he used. Okay, second example he used. Here we go. Immigration officers assert sweeping power to enter homes without a judge's warrant, memo says. Okay, so that's his example of the Fourth Amendment, how the Fourth Amendment is being attacked, okay? So this is the article that came from the AP, and what is he saying? So what's the headline? It says, immigration officers assert sweeping power to enter homes without a judge's warrant, memo says. That is not true. That headline is a lie, okay? What this headline actually should say is without a separate warrant to enter the home, because there already is a judge's warrant. It's a deportation order. Okay. And what the memo was saying, and what has not even been implemented yet, but what the memo was saying is that if there's a deportation order, that means that they could enter the home to get the person to be deported. All right. This is something that could be worked out by the courts. Who knows? Like, that's going to be worked out. That's not a violation of the Fourth Amendment, though. And this headline's a lie, and it's being used by Jon Stewart to prove that they're violating the Fourth Amendment. Okay? And I made a mistake before, and I mixed up the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, the right to due process. So that is my mistake. But that was the illegal search and seizure. Okay? So, but they don't care about the Fifth Amendment either. The Democrats don't care about the Fifth Amendment, and I mixed them up. All right. So then there's this one with his third example is violation of the 10th Amendment. In sanctuary cities, it's Trump versus the 10th Amendment. So what are they claiming? They're claiming that sanctuary cities, the point of a sanctuary city is that they have to help out law enforcement. So they're using certain right-wing, like what's it called, Samuel Alito, Antonin Scalia rulings that said that when that local authority, it cannot be basically deputized to enforce federal law. That had to do this with federal law regarding guns and federal law regarding sports gambling, and they're claiming that this is what the article is claiming, that will hold up regarding sanctuary cities. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what a sanctuary city is. It's not that they're just not helping the federal, the federal government enforce federal law. It's actively prohibiting the federal government from enforcing federal law. That's the difference between a sanctuary city and a non-sanctuary city. They're actually stopping. And actually, there was a judge in a sanctuary city who was recently sentenced because she actively helped illegals avoid ICE. And so a sanctuary city is not, we're just not going to help the federal government enforce federal law. It's they stop federal government from enforcing federal law. So that's a lie from Jon Stewart. Then you have this last one, which is the example of the 14th Amendment, which is Trump takes birthright citizenship to the Supreme Court. That's this one from NPR. And guess what? That is a legitimate argument about whether or not the 14th Amendment covers the birthright citizenship. All right? That is not a violation of the 14th Amendment. He is making the argument that it was never intended to cover birthright citizenship, and that was read into the law. Just like abortion was read into the law, was read into the Constitution, and then the Supreme Court overturned it. That's what happens all the time. All right? So that's not an attack on the 14th Amendment. That is basically saying that this thing that was read into law that does not exist, birthright citizenship is not a law. It is the law of the land the same way abortion was the law of the land. Basically, it means that judges claim that it was something that we have. But it's not actually, it was never passed through legislation or anything like that. So the claim that Trump is attacking all these different amendments is just a lie. And Jon Stewart's lying. And he either doesn't know that he's lying or he thinks his audience is too stupid to realize that he's lying. Up to you to decide.
But the second.
See, this is all he does. He just makes faces. He's not making an argument. And his trained SEALs.
Isn't that kind of the load-bearing wall of the "don't tread on me" flag? Your snake's down to a newt. Your deeply felt constitutional principle.
All right. Yeah, I can't with this guy. This guy, he doesn't understand what the Second Amendment's for. Okay? So first of all, let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, okay? Everyone's brought up that the right defended Kyle Rittenhouse, which was appropriate, but they're not defending Alex Pretti, which is also appropriate. So let me tell you the difference between Kyle Rittenhouse and Alex Pretti, okay? Kyle Rittenhouse went to Kenosha, Wisconsin during a riot because law enforcement wasn't protecting the city. So he decided to go and protect the city. He was attacked by people. He shot those people in self-defense. He went to you're talking about going through the criminal justice system. He went to court. He defended his own life. They all mocked him for crying on the stand, by the way. I'm sure if I look, Jon Stewart, there's a clip of Jon Stewart or Trevor Noah or whoever else is on The Daily Show at the time, mocking Kyle Rittenhouse for crying on the stand because he had to kill people to defend himself. But he went there and he was attacking rioters. He was defending against rioters, and he was attacked by rioters because law enforcement wasn't there, because they didn't mobilize the National Guard to protect these cities in the riots of 2020, in the George Floyd riots of 2020. Okay? Let's compare that with Alex Pretti. Alex Pretti is a rioter. We found out later that he actually had an altercation with ICE the week before. Okay? And what happened was he took a gun to a protest. He got into a confrontation with police. And he resisted arrest. Now, if you're carrying a gun legally, and you ever talk to a police officer for any reason, you tell them immediately that you're armed. You say, "Officer," raise your hands. Say, "Officer, I'm armed. Just letting you know." And you'll see this in entertainment. They do this all the time. You watch any TV show where somebody is armed and they're talking to an officer for whatever reason. They let them know they're armed because officers are armed too. And you do not want to get into that kind of confrontation. Okay? What you certainly don't do is get into a fight with a cop while you're armed. Okay? But let's take their argument and say he should be armed because he is using the Second Amendment for what it's meant for, which is to go against a tyrannical government, right? That's the argument. The argument for the Second Amendment is that it protects all the other freedoms that we have. That's why it's the second one. It protects everything. And the first one, it protects all the other freedoms we have, because if we have a tyrannical government, which is trying to subjugate its citizens, then if an armed citizenry prevents that. So let's make their argument, okay? And let's not just make their argument here. Let's make their argument in a contemporary case that happened in the United States of America. So I'm going to take you all the way back to 2014, something called the Bundy standoff. And this happened during the Obama era. And this was a perfect example of the use of the Second Amendment to protect their rights that the media hated. Okay? Cliven Bundy was a cattle rancher who, and I'm sorry about my voice, because my voice went in the last week, and I'm still going to try to push through. Kyle Bundy was a cattle rancher who got into an armed confrontation with law enforcement in 2014. It was a 21-year legal dispute in which the United States Bureau of Land Management obtained court orders directing Bundy to pay over $1 million in withheld grazing fees for Bundy's use of federally owned land adjacent to Bundy's ranch in southeastern Nevada. I'm just reading for the Wikipedia page right now. On March 27, 2014, 145,000 acres of federal land in Clark County were temporarily closed for the capture, impound, and removal of trespass cattle. BLM officials, BLM Bureau of Land Management, not Black Lives Matter, and law enforcement rangers began a roundup of such livestock on April 5th, and Clive Bundy's son, Dave, was arrested. On April 12, 2014, a group of protesters, some of them armed, approached the BLM cattle gather. Sheriff Doug Gillespie negotiated with Bundy and newly confirmed BLM Director Neil Cornze, who elected to release the cattle and de-escalate the situation. The stand-up drew support for some conservative and libertarian groups opposed to federal land policies, while the BLM faced criticism for its handling of the dispute, including the use of armed agents. Okay, so basically, the federal government had overreach on this land and they were finding Bundy and they took away their cattle or whatever. And there was a standoff between Bundy and his supporters and the federal government. All right. Now, going into that, everyone there, Bundy and his supporters, knew that they would be subject to arrest. And they were arrested. Bundy was arrested. He and his son, Ammon Bundy, they were arrested and they were put in jail because you can't go against the federal government with weapons. You will be subject to arrest. Now, what happened was that because they had guns, eventually the federal government backed off because they didn't want a escalation. So both sides had guns and they negotiated. And that's what happens. Okay? But you have to know going into it that because you are getting into an armed confrontation with police officers, something bad can happen. That's what happens when you exercise the Second Amendment. Okay? You do it with eyes wide open. Not only that, now I know that people like Jon Stewart, people on the left, don't listen to conservative podcasts or conservative media, but I can tell you that a lot of commercials are from pro-Second Amendment groups. And one of those groups, who I'm blanking on their name right now, what they talk about is basically it's kind of like a insurance, legal insurance, basically. That if you get into if you use your gun in defense, legally, someone breaks into your home, you shoot somebody, whatever, they will have a lawyer for you. Because when the cops come, because you shot somebody on your property, you will be arrested. And you could likely be charged. And then you have to make your legal case. This is what every single gun owner knows. Every single gun owner is aware of this. That exercising your Second Amendment rights comes with a responsibility. And that responsibility is that you could end somebody's life. You could be put in danger because now you're the one with the gun. So if somebody's coming at a group and you have a gun, that person's going to turn their gun on you because they want to take you out. Like, you have to go into it with your eyes open. But people like Jon Stewart, people on the left, they have no respect for the Second Amendment. They don't understand why people support the Second Amendment. So they have no understanding of why it's necessary. And if they have no understanding of why it's necessary, they can't understand it. And they can't explain it and they can't defend it. So to them, everybody with a gun is exactly the same. So if Alex Pretti has a gun and he's a good guy, then the Second Amendment must be defended. But Kyle Rittenhouse is a bad guy, so the Second Amendment must be attacked. Whereas I'm saying that both Kyle Rittenhouse and Alex Pretti both use their Second Amendment rights, and they both went into a situation in which they could be killed. And they both do that. They both faced massive repercussions. Obviously, Alex Pretti paid for it with his life. Kyle Rittenhouse paid for it with years and years of legal issues. I mean, it's not easy to be on the public spotlight in that way. And yeah, he had a lot of the country supporting him and still does. But that wasn't necessarily going to happen. And he didn't think that what would happen when he went into Kenosha that night. He just wanted to protect his community, or the community he worked at. Not the community he lived in, but the community he worked in. But they have no respect for this. The left has no respect for this. So they don't understand why those two things are different. And why the right respects what Kyle Rittenhouse did, because he went against rioters in defiant, and because law enforcement wasn't there. And Alex Pretti went against law enforcement. And that's the main difference. So I really wish that the left would learn from this. They won't, obviously. They have no respect for any of our amendments. It makes sense they have no respect for any of our amendments because they look at the Constitution as a living document. All of their justices on the Supreme Court talk about this, about how they could just change the Constitution as much as they want in the judiciary. So it doesn't really surprise me. They all wanted to gut the Second Amendment for decades. So it's really weird that they're defending it now, and then they claim that it's weird that we're not defending it now, even though we are. The right is still defending the Second Amendment. We're just saying, if you're going to go to a protest armed, and you're protesting against the cops, that's kind of dumb. It's a dumb thing to do. All right. We're going to keep it short this week because my voice is already gone. But please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and really appreciate it, and hope to see you back here next week. This has been A Hill with a View.